Okay, I have here 10 cards, and as you'll see in just a moment, these are cards where if we create two 5-card hands, any one of the following is possible. We could have just a 1 pair, or we could have 2 pairs, or we could have 3 of a kind. We could even have a straight, and even a full house, as you'll see. Okay, so let's just see how we do here with this packet of 10 cards. So what I thought I would do is just begin to mix these, and I want you to sound in and tell me how the mixing should be done. So I thought we would create 2 hands of 5 cards first in our mixing. So I'll begin just dealing out into 2 piles, and you can tell me kind of where to put the next card for the second level. You want it over here. Okay, we'll finish that level. What about this one? On the left. Very good. What about this one? Right this time. That's fine. Right again. Okay, very, very good. Okay, so we have these 2 piles of 5 cards each. How would you like me to stack these? Left on right or right on left? Right on left? Okay, very, very good. Now I'm going to give the cards a mix. In fact, if you were here, I'd have you cut the cards, or you can perform what's called a Charlier shuffle. That's what I'm doing here. Kind of a fun shuffle, but rest assured that you could actually do this instead of me doing it if you were here to do it. Okay, so there we go. We've really kind of mixed up the cards quite a bit. Now I need you to choose a random number between, let's say 3 and 7. Okay, and the reason for that range is we're going to then take these 2 piles and kind of, quote, riffle shuffle them together. And so to be able to practically do that, you need probably at least 3 cards in each pile. So any number between 3 and 7. 4? Okay, so I'll just deal out 4 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Set the remaining cards down. And then what we're going to do is something called a rosette shuffle. And it's similar to, in fact, it accomplishes the same thing as a traditional riffle shuffle, as we'll talk about in the tutorial in just a minute. But that's kind of a nice looking shuffle. It's kind of cool to watch there. So that's called the rosette shuffle. And at this point, we're going to perform something called a Klondike shuffle. So this is a classic shuffle. This is where the top and bottom card off is 1, and then you just move all of the cards from one hand to the other. From here, we could do additional Charlier shuffles if you would like, or if you were here, I'd have you just cut the cards randomly. That would be just fine. And finally, to finish, I'll go ahead and just deal out 2 hands of 5 cards each, dealing to you first, which is kind of customary. Okay? Okay, so you have your set of 5 cards, and I have mine. Oh, by the way, I have a prediction over here that I wrote. The Queen of Hearts tells it straight. Stick with me, and you'll beat a 1 pair of aces. That's interesting. So the prediction says that whoever has the Queen of Hearts will not only win, because they'll have the stronger poker hand, but in particular they'll have a straight, and the loser will have only a pair of aces. So let's see who the lucky person is who got the Queen of Hearts. Oh, it wasn't me. There you go. That means that you must have gotten it, you lucky dog. You did indeed. And did my prediction that I just read come true? Well, the Queen of Hearts tells it straight. Stick with me, which you did. You got the Queen of Hearts, and you would beat a 1 pair of aces. And that's exactly what you have done. We have a straight, and we have a 1 pair. Congratulations. How in the world did you just happen to make random choices that would lead to the verification of a prediction that was given or written ahead of time? You are quite the card shark. Okay, so how does this work? How does this effect work? Okay, so what you need is you need the cards that I have here. So I'll go ahead and just kind of put them out in groups so you can see what we started with. So I had a pair of tens. I had a pair of jacks, which is fine. I had a single queen. Okay. I had a pair of kings. And then I had 3 aces. Okay. So where I began was, in fact, you could actually begin here if you would like. Instead of working with the original down-facing packet of 10 cards, you could actually show them all of this. And then what you would need to do is you just randomly stack these with one proviso. The queen needs to be next to the group of 3 aces. It can either be above it or below it. The other pairs of cards can be randomly stacked. So for example, we could take this one here, and then maybe this one, and then we could take the queen, but as I mentioned, it needs to go next to the 3 aces, so there you go, and then we can stack the jacks on top, okay? So this packet, the way it's ordered right now, is just one of many ways to order those groupings of cards so that the prediction written at the beginning proves to be true. Okay, so starting here will work just fine. Okay, so this is the kind of thing I had. Okay. So what did we do first? Well, what we did first was we did an LR shuffle. Okay, left, right, okay? Now, what I want to point out is the structure we have now is something called an AMP. So if you watched other videos on my channel, you'll know what an AMP is. Okay, so I thought I would use some colored back cards to illustrate an AMP. So an AMP is where from the top or from the bottom, the cards come in special pairs that are in some sense related, okay? So you can see that that's the case here. I have 2 blue ones, followed by a pair of red, pair of green, pair of blue, pair of red, okay? So if you have any kind of packet structure like this, and you perform an LR, left-right shuffle, which is what we started with, you'll create what's called a 2-cycle structure. Okay, so what's a 2-cycle? A 2-cycle is where you have a repeating pattern that occurs twice. Something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, followed by a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so those could be ace through 5 of clubs, followed by ace of hearts through the 5 of hearts. Something like that, okay? So why don't we go ahead and just see that in action? So let's just take a look at what happens when I left, right, deal, and then randomly stack such an organization of the cards. So I'm just doing left, right. Oh, in fact, I did what's called an RLR, where you're allowed to kind of randomly put the next one down, then you finish level 2, and then I allowed you to put this over here maybe, and then that one. Where do you want this one? Over here. Can you see it doesn't matter where you put it? It's going to end up with the same structure as it would have if we had just done left, right, left, right. Okay, so take a look at what's going on here. So maybe we'll move these. Let me just shift these up here. I'm sorry. They're just kind of in the way here. Okay, so let's just take a look at what's going on after we did that dealing out, left, right dealing of an AMP. Okay, let's slide those over. Well, what do you see is happening? Can you see that we have identical patterns on the left and on the right? So the top card for each pile is red, and then the second card down is blue, green, red, blue. Okay? So if we randomly stack these, this is called a 2-cycle with cycle length 5. So why is it cycle length 5? Well, it's because there's two groups of 5 cards where their patterns are identical. So red, blue, green, red, blue, red, blue, green, red, blue. Okay, so this is called a cyclic construction, or a 2-cycle having cycle length 5. Okay, now this kind of organization of the cards has a very special property relative to card cutting. Okay, so let's go ahead and just maybe show you that. So if we cut any number of cards from the top to the bottom, does that destroy the 2-cycle organization or structure of that packet? Well, it changes it, but it doesn't destroy it, right? So for example, I'll go ahead and just jog that so you can see each cycle clearly. Now we have blue, red, blue, green, red, blue, red, blue, green, red. It's still cyclic. It's still a 2-cycle. It still has a pattern that repeats twice, okay? So for any cutting of the cards, it will not hurt this kind of structure. So a 2-cycle is invariant under packet cuts. Well, it ends up that this Charlier shuffle, this top to bottom, bottom to top, top to bottom, is equivalent to just cutting the cards at some location. And that's talked about, and in fact I have a separate video on the Charlier shuffle that goes into great detail and teaches you how to do that. But really all you're doing is you're pushing over any number of cards into your other hand. Then from the bottom, you push over any number, deposit those on top. Top over here goes on the bottom. Bottom over here goes on the top. So it's top to bottom, bottom to top, even though all of that movement is the same as just cutting the cards at some location, and we still have a 2-cycle. Okay, so why don't we get to that point in the performance? Okay, so I've kind of shown you what's going on here for a couple of steps in this routine. Now let's go back to our quote AMP. I call this an AMP. Boy, that looks very different than what we were just looking at in our simplified version. So if we view this as an AMP, the relationship between the cards within each pair is that they be of the same value, like a 10, a king, an ace, and a jack, right? With one exception. One of our pairings is going to consist of the Queen of Hearts, and here it's the Ace of Diamonds, okay? So that's one of our pairings. All the rest are in some sense more natural pairings to create because of their identical card values within each pair. But when it comes to imposing a structure on a packet of cards, you're free to do whatever you like. Okay, so as long as you are aware of what structure you're imposing and know how that structure behaves relative to certain shuffles, it's perfectly fine to view this as an AMP in which the pairs consist of cards of the same, except for one pair where it's a queen and an ace constituting that special pair. Okay, so in some sense that's kind of like the odd man out. Okay, that one's a little different than the others. But everything I talked about with this multicolored packet for the example we just showed holds true here. Okay, so if we view this as an AMP, what is going to happen? Well, if we perform a left-right shuffle, just as we did for this multicolored packet, it led to something that we call a 2-cycle. Well, that's going to be the same thing here. Okay? In fact, we could even do it face up if you like. So what we'll see is if I do a left, right, okay, and then I'm giving the person, now remember the cards normally would have been face down, but I'm allowing you to see under the hood, and the person might go, I'll put it over there, and then we'll finish that level. This one can go here, and then that one there. Now here's the exception. We're going to view this as a special pair. Well, in what way is it special? Well, it's going to be special in the sense that one player will get the Queen of Hearts, and that will be the hand consisting of a straight, and the Ace of Diamonds will be in the other hand where it contains only a single pair of aces. Okay, so here we go. Now this can go anywhere. There you go. And this could go here and then there. Okay, so can you see that it really is the same sort of thing? Now, of course, we have this one exception. Well, if you think about it, I had one exception here. It was the green pair. It was kind of out of keeping with the other pairs. It's kind of strange in some way. But nonetheless, it gave rise to a two-cycle. Okay, and once we have a two-cycle, okay, so now we can close these up. And randomly stacking these will give us a two-cycle with cycle length 5, just as we saw here. Well, since it is a two-cycle, in other words cyclic, we can do random cutting, and it won't change the fact that it's cyclic, just as we saw with this little packet, right? Okay, or we can even do a Charlier shuffle if you'd like, top to bottom, bottom to top, top to bottom, okay? That won't change the fact that it is a, quote, two-cycle with cycle length 5. Okay, so what did we do from there? Well, since this is cyclic, we have a very important, powerful principle in mathematical card magic that can be utilized. It's called the Gilbreth principle. Okay, so what is the Gilbreth principle? Well, the Gilbreth principle says that if you have a cyclic construction, here we have a two-cycle with cycle length 5. The Gilbreth principle says the following, that if you deal out any number of cards into one pile and then perform a riffle shuffle or anything equivalent to a riffle shuffle, it will preserve a special structure for that packet of cards. Okay, so if you remember, I asked the spectator to kind of randomly choose a number between 3 and 7, and I think we chose 4, or we assumed the spectator chose 4. Okay, and then what we did was a rosette shuffle. I want to just point out what a classic riffle shuffle is. Here's a classic riffle shuffle. This is where you break the cards about in half, and then you just let them fall left, right, however they may. And you can do a little bridging of the cards. That's called a riffle shuffle. Well, something that's equivalent to a riffle shuffle is this rosette shuffle. So this is where you just spin the cards and then just bring them together. It really accomplishes the same sort of thing that an ordinary riffle shuffle will achieve. Okay? It's just easier to perform on small packets, and it's prettier in some ways. Okay, so the Gilbreth principle involves two actions. So to apply the Gilbreth principle, we first have to begin with some kind of a cyclic construction of a packet of cards. We had a two-cycle with cycle length 5, and then you reverse count any number of cards. That's where you just deal them to the table, and it reverses the order of those cards. And then you riffle shuffle those two halves together, or here we did a rosette shuffle, which is just fine. Now, doing all of that, the Gilbreth principle now applies, and it tells us the following, that this two-cycle with cycle length 5 will still have a very important property. Let me just show you the property it has. It has the property that if you take the top 5 cards, which was the cycle length, and the bottom 5 cards, which was also the cycle length, each half will consist of exactly one card from each of the pairings that we set up at the very beginning before we did the LR shuffle. Well, what does that mean? If you remember, here we had 2 pairs of red, 2 pairs of blue, and then 1 pair of green. Well, what that means then is the top half, or top 5 cards, will have 2 red, 2 blue, and a green in some order. We don't know the order. The bottom half will also have 2 red, 2 blue, and 1 green in some order. But once again, we won't know the order. That will depend on how those cards were interlaced, how many cards were dealt out to begin with, and how they're interlaced. Okay, but there is something that we know, that these 2 little halves will have the same number of cards for each of the 3 colors of cards. So 2 red, 2 blue, and 1 green. And we can see the conclusion of the Gilbreth principle. Well, what does that mean for this one then? Let's just think about that, okay? So let's go down here. Maybe I'll set it, let me just set it down here so that maybe you can continue to see it as a reference as we work with the real packet up there. Okay, so this packet here, now I apologize, I can't remember whether we have Gilbreth shuffled this yet, so sorry about that. So I'll take a peek, I'll be able to tell if we have. Has this been Gilbreth shuffled? It has not yet. Can you see that? Okay, you can rewind the video to check. I can't, right? Because look, okay, so here we go, the 2 cycles of length 5. Okay, the first card in the first cycle needs to match the first card in the second cycle. And we have Jack, Jack, Ace, Ace, Queen, that red ace, King, King. Okay, so we have not, as you can check, we have not, quote, Gilbreth shuffled this yet. Okay, so we would ask the spectator for any number, let's say between 3 and 7. That was just for convenience. We can do 4 as well. I think that's what we went with here. So they'll say, maybe they'll say 4. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and a rosette shuffle is kind of a good choice just because of how small these packets are. These cards can come together however they will. It won't matter. The Gilbreth principle will apply. Why is that? Because it was cyclic to begin with. It was a 2 cycle with cycle length 5. And then we reverse counted any number of cards. We happened to do 4. And then we did something that's equivalent to a riffle shuffle in bringing those together. Okay, so the Gilbreth principle applies then. Okay, so what does that mean? Here's the bottom half. Here's the top. Okay, so top 5, bottom 5. So what should be true? Well, think about what was true here. So for example, there should be 1 jack here and 1 jack there. 1 king there, 1 king there. 1 10 somewhere in there, 1 10 somewhere in there. There should be an ace in here, another ace in there. And then we had that special pair that I denoted by green. We had a queen matched with a queen of hearts matched with a ace of diamonds, I believe. One of these contains the queen of hearts, but we don't know which, and the other one contains the ace of diamonds. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and just verify the conclusion of the Gilbreth principle. Is it true that 1 set of 5 contains 1 of each? Sorry, I had to move the cards over because they were going off the screen. Apologize for that. Okay, so let's just kind of verify that things worked out the way that we wanted. Is it true that there's a 10 in each of these? Yes. Is it true that there's a jack in each of these? Yes. Is it true that there's a king in each of these? Yes. Is it true that there's at least 1 ace in each of these? Yeah. And then we also had that funny pair, the queen of hearts paired with the ace of diamonds. And so one of these would contain the queen, and we can see which one it is. It's this one, which means that the other half would have to contain the ace of diamonds. Okay, just as we saw down here with that crazy green pair, the pair that kind of stands out as unusual. Okay, so in some ways we're done. If you think about the written prediction said stick with the queen and you're guaranteed to finish with a straight, which we have, and your opponent would have only a one pair of aces, and they do. Okay, but that's not where we stopped, if you think about it. So let's go ahead and just put, it doesn't matter how we stack these. Let's go back before. So this is right, once again, I can't remember which went where, but it doesn't matter actually. This is a packet that's achievable by Gilbreth shuffling that 2 cycle, having cycle length 5, that we had just before the Gilbreth shuffling was performed. Okay? Same thing here. We can stack these over here. Okay. So what's going on here? The top 5. In fact, we can even look here just so we're kind of definite. It looks like the queen. Okay, so the top 5 cards is the straight, and the bottom 5 cards is that single pair of aces. Okay. Now, what did we do from there? Just kind of look at the write-up. Where did we go from there? We got to this point, and then we did something special. We did a Klondike shuffle, which is a very cool shuffle to perform, actually. It's a classic shuffle, and it's an amazing shuffle as well in terms of what it does to mix the cards. Okay? So just think about what's going on with this packet. Anything of importance is happening in the top half of this packet, top 5 cards, and the bottom half. Okay, so those 2 halves are the special hands that we're going to reveal at the end. Okay, so just think about, okay, the top 5 cards, bottom 5 cards. We want to keep those together. Now we're going to like separate them and mix them and scramble them, but we want them to come back together so that we finish with those 2 special poker hands that we predicted at the beginning. Okay, so let me just show you something here to illustrate an important principle. Okay, so what I have here is I have cards that I've marked, and we'll probably work with these cards face up so that you can see what's going on. Okay, so what I've done is I've marked the top 5 cards as top. So these are coming from the top. So the top 5 cards are these, and the bottom 5 cards are in blue down here. Okay, so think about what we did next. We did a Klondike shuffle. So we'll go ahead and just do it face up. A Klondike shuffle is where you take the top and the bottom off as 1 card, and you just set them down. Top and bottom is 1, top and bottom is 1, and so forth. Well, can you see what's happening? What kind of structure are we going to have for this little packet after performing the Klondike shuffle? Well, it's going to alternate. How will it alternate? Well, we can see that it alternates in colors right here, but it's alternating relative to where each card came from. Did the card come from the top half of the packet or from the bottom half of the packet? So this one here is from the bottom top, all the way through. Okay? So this Klondike shuffle will always take an even-sized packet and turn it into a cyclic packet of alternating cards, one coming from the top half and one coming from the bottom half, or vice versa. And technically speaking, we would actually call this a 5 cycle with cycle length 2. Now, I don't know if that's important here, but if you notice, the cycle length is how many cards it takes before a certain pattern repeats. Well, it's just 2. So we have blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, and so forth. Okay, so this, and it does it 5 times. So this is a 5 cycle with cycle length 2. Okay, but more importantly, it's an alternating packet, which means it's cyclic. Well, being cyclic, what does that mean relative to cutting the cards? Well, that's what we did in step 6. If we just cut the cards randomly or perform a Charlier shuffle, will that change the fact that it consists of an alternation of cards coming from the top or from the bottom? It doesn't. In fact, it looks like it's gone back to where it was. So let me just cut 1 to the bottom so that it at least looks a little different. So now we have a blue card on top, okay? but you can see that it's still an alternating packet, okay? So it's still cyclic. And so that will be true for a Charlier shuffle. If you do a top to bottom, bottom to top, top to bottom, okay? And I encourage you to take a look at that video I have on my channel. If this is alternating, what's going to happen if I deal it into two piles? Let me just move that up. So if I do one to you, one to me, one to you, one to me, this is the very final step. Well, we've just pulled apart again the top half and the bottom half. Okay, so these cards will be the 5 cards from the bottom of this, and then these cards will be the 5 from the top of this. Well, that will give us the very hands that we wrote our prediction about, right? That the queen would be a member of a straight, and that the other hand of 5 cards would only contain a single pair of aces. Okay, so you can kind of see that that's going to happen there, right? Okay, well, let's go ahead and just do it, okay? Because we haven't done that yet. We haven't done the Klondike. Let me just remind you, what are we looking at? Okay, these are the 2, quote, poker hands that we're wanting. There's our straight with the Queen of Hearts. There's our straight. And then here is our single pair of aces. Okay. So now if we do the Klondike, it will put the top and bottom cards in an alternating organization. They'll be alternating relative to each other. Okay, so like this card either came from the top or bottom. Let's say the top, and then this came from the bottom, top, bottom, and so forth. Well, because it's alternating, you can randomly cut it. Won't hurt that. Or you can perform a Charlier shuffle. That won't hurt anything either. And then when you're done with all of that mixing, which will be very convincing to any spectator, you just deal 1 to them, 1 to you. And what this does is it separates the 5 cards that were on the top back into the same group, and the cards that were on the bottom, they'll be back in their original group of 5. Okay, and then at this point you can bring out your prediction to say, well, my prediction here says that the Queen of Hearts tells it straight. Stick with me and you'll beat a 1 pair of aces. Well, is that true? Which of us got the Queen of Hearts? And is it part of a straight or not? Yeah. Oh, it is. Check that out. That's a straight. And is it true the best you have over here is a single pair of aces? It is indeed. Okay, great. Well, anyway, I hope that helps, and it gives you some insights into some of the important structures studied on the Hidden Structures channel, and the kinds of things that you can do with certain structures that will not harm them, and how you move from one structure type to another, like an AMP to a 2-cycle. And from a 2-cycle, you can perform as many cuts or Charlier shuffles as you like. And every cyclic construction can be Gilbreth shuffled, and that preserves some amazing properties as well. And then we use this fun little additional mixing from steps 5 to step 8 that really seemed like they should scramble and destroy whatever order was there, which in some sense is true, but the structure that we were interested in is preserved, and that is what's important. And then at the end of this document on the left, you'll see the heading Encore Performance. Well, what this is referring to is after you've finished in the way that we just finished, you know, where you have the 2 poker hands, a straight and a single pair. If you just stack those 2 5-card hands, you can actually repeat steps 5, 6, 7, and 8 again and finish in a way that confirms your prediction yet a second time. And you can do that as many times as you like, steps 5 through 8. Okay, well, thank you for watching. I made this video especially for my LinkedIn Math Card Magic group. So thank you for watching, and take a look at other videos on the Hidden Structures YouTube channel